Good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming out. On behalf of Corona East Elmhurst Historical Preservation Society, I want to thank everybody for coming. And as Jim pointed out, this is one of our initial programs in terms of documenting the history, the culture, the memories, the experiences that we shared and a lot of times grew and developed and became the people that we are. And Corona East Elmhurst Historical Preservation Society was formed a little over 3 years ago, and our motto, our mission is to preserve, protect, and promote the history and the culture of Corona East Elmhurst, the sister communities, communities that we don't really separate. We see it as one big community, though it may have, two of them may have distinct names or memories for us. So we see them being one and the same because of our shared experiences. So we appreciate that, and there's a lot of things we're doing as an organization to promote, protect, and preserve these histories and cultures. And this is one of the things we're going to be doing. So we thank you for joining with us in this endeavor, and I'm going to turn it over to one of our other colleagues from Corona East Elmhurst Historical Preservation Society's Board of Directors, Brother Andrew Jackson, otherwise known as Sekou.
Not a whole lot more to add to that, other than the fact that because the community has changed so much demographically, we need to make sure that we are the people who document our own history and make sure that the things that they don't even know about our community and things that they're changing in our community, that is documented and is preserved, and there's an organization that's key role is to maintain the history and culture of our community. So we are about that, and we are documenting it in many different ways. You can use this a simple example of the history of the giant rock as an example of what it meant to us. The hotel covered most of it up. Instead of it being the giant rock, they want to rename it the pet rock. We're at a point now where that's getting ready to change because the current administration that the hotels that the giant rock is on the property of have acknowledged that there is a history, that it does have a role and it had a significance to our community, that they're actually going to rename it very shortly. Something as simple as that points out what is happening all throughout our community, the significance of the organizations, or the significance of the schools that we went to and what it had a role in. I was talking to Rob Llewellyn, the fact that there was a culture of a community, and not just the neighborhood, but the community welcomed us home from Vietnam, and the things that we had to go through, the PSTD that we had coming home from Vietnam. If it wasn't for the families and the people in this community who welcome us home and help us get through that, we would have a whole different experience, post-war experience. So Corona East Elmhurst is unique, and there are people all over this community who are all over the United States now, who have done some incredible things and risen to levels higher than we even thought we could have risen to, that we need to know about it, and that we need to celebrate them and celebrate what this community meant to them. And they have never forgotten this community either. That's the other thing. So part of that is all what this society is all about, what our purpose and mission is, and we hope that all of us, the people in the community, will be part of that and help to celebrate what we are doing.
So now we are going to ask folks to share their stories. And we want to start first with the residents and then move to board members who would like to share. Thank you so much for agreeing to be our first presenter for this particular segment of the documentary concerning the history of Corona East Elmhurst. Could you give us your name? And I know you gave it once before, but we'd like to get it clearer. And
Cheryl
then also
Harris.
Cheryl Harris. Cheryl, what would you like to share about the community?
Stores and the businesses that were here when I was a young person.
Tell me about those stores.
Okay. Starting on Astoria Boulevard, there was a liquor store first, that's what I remember. Then next to it, there was a Prosperity Cleaners. I don't know if anybody remembers that. And then there was the A&P next to it. And this venue that we're using used to be a drugstore. Next door, I don't remember. And moving down, there was a candy store there. No, it was a record store at one time, and then it was a candy store, and now it's a Cleaners. And across from there was a variety store, and next door to that was a hardware store. Next door to that, I think it was a bodega. I don't remember that. Then there was a beauty shop there. And then next to that, it was the post office, the United States Post Office. And moving down, it was another hardware store. We had 2 hardware stores in the community. And further down, it was Cleaners. And at the very end of that block was a drugstore, another drugstore. And then there were 3 diners. There were 2 diners on this side of the street.
You remember the name of those diners?
The Deerhead.
The Deerhead.
And the one that changed most recently is now the Buccaneer. I don't remember what the name of that was. Wagon Wheel.
Wagon Wheel, right.
And across the street from there, it was, I don't remember, Silver Rail, I think it was called. And all 3 of those diners were owned by a group of Greek gentlemen. One person.
One person.
Now today it's changed. It's a drugstore, Walgreens, and it's a Cleaners across the street. But the Buccaneer is still there. And the other side, the library was down there. Then there's the theater there. It's still there now. We used to go and watch movies, 3 movies for 15 cents, I think. And then there's a restaurant. And as I say, the drugstore and Butts Realty. I don't remember what was before Butts Realty. And then another candy store. And then there was a funeral parlor there. But I don't remember the name of that funeral parlor. It wasn't very busy for some reason. I actually never saw a funeral there. And taxi stand, I think, and moving all the way up. St. Gabriel's was a Catholic school, but now it's parochial, I believe. And on the corner was another candy store. No, it wasn't on the corner. I don't remember what was on the corner, but then there was a candy store. And then there was a fish store between 98th and 99th. And then there was a bakery and a shoemaker on the corner here. And then that was an empty lot where, I don't know if it's a Stop and Shop, what they call it? The shopping where we shop. And up there was a big empty lot. Now it's First Baptist. And continue to move up. There was a few little stores there, but I didn't live that far up, so I never made a note of it. Those are the places I remembered.
Of the stores that you mentioned, do you recall if any of the owners lived in the neighborhood?
No, I don't think they did.
They were all outside.
Oh, Cunningham's. Yeah, they used to live in the neighborhood.
And what business did the Cunninghams have?
A candy store, I think. I don't remember now. It was candy? Yeah, it was a candy store. And they lived in the neighborhood.
What fascinated you about all these businesses that you can remember them so clearly?
Things change, and like I'll say, oh, now this is a senior citizen center, and it used to be a drugstore.
Right. Yeah. How do you feel about the changes that have occurred in the community since you were young?
I think we're still in the evolution because things are going, every day things change. So it's kind of hard to put your finger on it.
Right.
But we didn't, there was a meat store, up here. And that was very nice, a butcher shop.
Butcher shop.
I don't think we have that in this community any longer. Things like that.
Yeah. What block did you live on?
96th Street between Astoria and 31st Avenue.
And you
We were the first black people to move on that block.
What was that like? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but I know my mother told me I came home with a black eye from the Italian kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, your mother remembers, right? So you were the first
Black people to live in that block.
And so the others were mostly Italian?
Yeah, they were all Italian.
They were all Italian.
Yeah.
Right. And when you went to 127 or?
Yeah, 127.
Okay. What was the population like at that time?
I think the majority was Italian.
The majority was Italian.
At that time, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, I know, because I went to 127. I didn't see any Italians, when I went there. Was it a good experience growing up in this community? I mean, what are some of your best moments, enjoyable moments?
I guess the playground was wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
but we always had adult supervision. It's not like now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's enough adult supervision for the kids.
Right.
I remember when 127 was an open field. It wasn't closed off. It was no grass. It was just open. I know when they built it, the playground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you said you had to have adult supervision to go to the playground.
Well,
They
they were just there.
Was that because the Italians in the neighborhood?
That's how they operated in those days.
That's what was expected.
Adults were always with us. Like if we're going to go somewhere, whose parent is going?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You couldn't just say, "Oh, we're all hanging out at the pool." No,
Mm-hmm.
an adult had to accompany us.
Right. Pool?
We had
Was
to
a pool?
No, there wasn't a pool there. There's one now. I'm thinking of on
Mm-hmm.
98th Street, I think.
Right.
But if we're going to go somewhere, we always had to have an adult with us.
Lots of folks have moved out of the community.
Yeah.
And
I think there are only
yeah.
2 of my classmates left in this area.
Right.
Linda Silvera, her father was a famous actor.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Mutiny on the Bounty with Marlon Brando.
Okay.
And another friend of mine, Linda Thompson, but she just moved. She went to Maryland.
Okay.
And those are the only 2 I knew. Another friend of mine, Richard Brown, he moved out as well. Recently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't think any of my classmates are left here.
Right. Well, it's just been really major change. Why are you still here?
Because I invested in the community.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
I bought a house,
Okay.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's why I'm still here.
Right.
It's not so easy to sell your house and pick up and move again.
Right.
And my parents were here, so I wasn't going to leave.
Right.
We still own the house that they lived in
Mm-hmm.
on 96th Street.
Are you active in any of the local organizations in Corona, East Elmhurst?
We have a block association
Mm-hmm.
on Ditmars Boulevard, and the AARP Women's Group. Well, I don't know. Well, I don't really see that many men in it, so let me just say it's a women's group.
Mm-hmm.
And what else is going on? I think that's about it that I can think of right at the moment.
Well, I thank you so very much. I think you did an
Thank you for
excellent job.
interviewing me.
Thank you for sharing.
All right, you have a good.
All right. We have another member of the community currently residing in Corona, East Elmhurst. And could you just give us your name?
Okay, I came to this community and my name was Pat. Okay, when I graduated from high school, I had to show my birth certificate, and that's where Marva came in. And nobody ever called me Marva. I know even my parents. So I'm still Pat Phillips. I've been living here since I was 13 years old, and I'm in my 70s now. So I've been here a long time. I raised 6 children here, and I went to 127. I went to Newtown High School, and that's about me. I came from Holland. My parents were immigrants. My mother was from the British Virgin Islands. My father was from the Dominican Republic. So we moved here, and East Elmhurst in that day was kind of grouped. So being of West Indian heritage, I didn't really feel warm here in the beginning, but I did go to school here. You know, I have a twin brother that also, when we moved here, it was me and my brother, and I had two older brothers. And they were in, one went to City College and the other one went in the service.
When you said you experienced the community as a group
Yes.
initially, well,
Yes.
what changed? to
Okay,
give you-
okay. When I first moved here, on both sides of where I lived on 23rd Avenue were Italian. They quickly moved. As we moved in, they moved out. Okay? And going to 127, I came there in the 8th grade, so it was a little difficult acclimating into that environment because I lived in Harlem and I knew everybody on the block, you know. And then when you move here, you have to meet people, and on 23rd Avenue at that time, there wasn't many children, so I was really into my family, and those are the people I knew. I went to Harlem almost at least once or twice a week, you know. So I had to learn East Elmhurst. I had to learn the people, and learn. Most of the people I knew were from maybe the South or whatever. It wasn't that many Latinos or Caribbean people, so it was pretty new to me because I came from Harlem and everybody knew each other on the block.
What did you do in terms of socializing once you settled here?
Well, I think going to school, you got to socialize. You know, you got to meet people and whatnot, and you know, you have to, you know, get yourself into the community. And I went to high school here. I married a man from East Elmhurst that moved here. You know, I met him in 127 and high school. Yeah. And 127 in those days was elementary and junior high school. So it was two schools together, which that doesn't happen today.
What were some of your most enjoyable moments living in this community?
Well, I tell you, I really was into my family. It took me a while to acclimate into East Elmhurst community, you know. Like I said, school was one of the points, but my roots really were in Harlem, you know. Anything else you wanna
Yes,
say?
your roots were in Harlem. When did your roots get in East Elmhurst?
I met my husband.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. And he was from the South. He was from Alabama. And he had moved here before I moved here. And he was into his family too. He was into his people from Alabama. He had come up here with, I think, 5 of his aunts. And they all lived in the same house I live in right now. You know. So, I guess I got acclimated with school, and I met my husband.
Right. On your block when you grew up, were most of the folks from the South or in some?
Okay, I lived right next door to Dr. Jive. He was a radio announcer on WBAI or whatever. He lived right next door, and the next door to me was an Italian family, and they lived there for a little while. You know, they got old, and you know, like the way my family is, they would help them do things, you know. And on the corner was a lady from the British Virgin Islands, so I knew her. I knew her family and whatnot, and that was about it. Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else you want to share with us? Were you able to walk the streets at night?
Oh, it was.
The doors were locked? What was that?
No problem. No problem. It was very safe. You could come home late at night, early in the morning. No problem, you know. I don't remember anybody breaking in or stealing or anything. It was very safe. where I could say maybe Holland was not that safe, you know, but it was very safe.
Right. Okay, very good. Thank you so very much for sharing. Continuing with the reflections about the community from residents of the community, we have another guest, someone who's been working very closely with the Corona East Elmhurst Historical Preservation Society. So tell us who you are and share with us whatever you feel that, that touches on the wonderful history of Corona East Elmhurst.
Okay, my name is Robert Butts. One of the many Buttses that grew up in this neighborhood. My family has been here maybe 70 years or so, somewhere around there. We all came out of East Harlem. My father followed his brother, who had originally moved out here in the late 1940s, and started a real estate business. And then eventually we came out in the late part of the 1950s. And then some more of my cousins came after that. So East Elmhurst has been my home since 1958, 1959, somewhere around that area. It's been a good experience for me. I've moved out of East Elmhurst, moved back to East Elmhurst, moved out of East Elmhurst, moved back to East Elmhurst. I lived in Brooklyn for a while. I did a tour of duty in the Marine Corps for a while. Came back to the neighborhood. So I consider this definitely my neighborhood. The good experiences, there's a lot of good experiences. I can't, to be really honest with anybody, I can't really say that I had bad experiences in growing up in East Elmhurst. You know, looking around, you know, my friends are still around. I agree, a lot of people have moved out of the neighborhood, but a lot of people are still here, and our relationships have maintained. What's a cute little story was I've traveled a lot. I've worked for American Airlines 26 years before I retired, and so I've done a lot of traveling. And I remember my dad, who at that time was 89 years old, we had decided to go to Kenya, and we were in Kenya, and a guy comes over to our table. We're having breakfast in the morning, and he says, "Could I sit down with y'all and have breakfast?" You know, I says, "Yeah, why not?" He says, "Because I know you're all Americans. I can tell by what y'all are saying that you're all Americans." And he says, "Yeah," but I could tell by his accent he was American, you know. And I said, "Yeah, sit down," you know. And so we said, my friend says to him, says, "Where you from?" He says, "Well, I'm from New York." So my friend says, "Well, Robert, he's from New York." I said, "Well, where are you from in New York?" He says, "Well, you wouldn't know. I'm from a place in Queens." I said, "Try me." You know? He says, "I'm from East Elmhurst." I said, "Oh, is that right? So am I." You know, and this is Kenya, right? You know, and he winds up to be a real close friend of mine's nephew. You know, which
That's
is
really amazing.
Yeah, you know, which is, but that's been my experience of traveling all over this country, certainly, and internationally, the same exact. People who come from East Elmhurst have maintained that loyalty. East Elmhurst and Corona, because it's the same, have maintained that loyalty about where they're from, no matter where they are.
I wanted to ask you about that because it seems to be a very strong sense of togetherness of folks who are from Corona, East Elmhurst, and it seems that whether you live here or if you move from here, there always seems to be a strong attachment that people express when they say, "I'm from Corona or East Elmhurst." Where do you think that comes from?
Well, the first place you have to give major credit for that is the institutions that we developed in this community. You know, a lot of times people will say they'll dog the black community. You know, saying black community doesn't have this, black community doesn't have that, the city needs to give this, the government needs to give that. But Corona East Elmhurst is built on some established black institutions, and they don't get credit. The place we're having this interview, which, you know, yes, used to be a drugstore, but this building the Elmhurst Senior Citizen Center is actually owned by black people, established by black people, like Elmhurst itself up on Northern Boulevard, like the black churches that are in this community that have been here 50, 60, 70 years. You can't deny that. And so if you want to say, how come the people in our community have that tightness, it's because the older generation took the responsibility to build the institutions which allowed them to excel. You know, Elmhurst, Adult Senior Citizens Organization, not just the seniors, but Elmhurst itself is one of the only strong non-profit organizations run in the city of New York by all black people, created by black people. You know, and so we developed on that. I mean, I remember very clearly at the senior, when we were kids, 127, which was public school, they had a night center program, which was run by black men to get us off the street. These guys volunteered at the time. Yeah, there was a couple of guys there who were paid, but most of them volunteered their time so that we could go to night centers so that we could be off the street.
Well, I'm interested. That's really interesting. Now, you said you came from East Harlem,
Right.
to this area. If you can recall, did they have similar situations like that, and structures and foundations and institutions in East Harlem?
Not really. I grew up on First Avenue, 105th Street, and not really. Further uptown, you know, because we as kids we went to Menacing, you know, which was further uptown, you know, but Menacing was really the only real structural thing there. Even though, again, one cannot deny the influence of the black church, because the black churches in Harlem were also powerful.
Right.
You know, Abyssinian Baptist, we went to Canaan Baptist Church, and they all had programs, but not what I found when I came here. You know, there was some serious structure here that kids, and it kept developing. It kept developing. You know, it wasn't a lot when we first got here, but as more people came here, they started developing. One of the interesting things is that there was this whole migration of Harlem here to this area of a whole bunch of West Indians, you know, and they started pulling together. My father was from Guyana, and my whole family, matter of fact, and that nucleus started pulling together, so they started working because they knew what they wanted to build. But all these people who came out of Harlem lived in tenements, you know, and they didn't have, but all of them were workers. And so when they came out here, they decided to build something which they remember from where they came from.
I want to ask you, when the migration from Harlem to East Elmhurst, you said a lot of them were from the Caribbean, West Indies. Who was here when they got here?
Oh, it was all Italians and Germans.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when we got it, I think we might have been the fourth black family on our block. We lived on 99th Street. I think if we wasn't fourth, maybe we were the fifth for me. It wasn't a lot, but what was amazing was that it was like an overnight thing. We moved in on a Monday, and by that Wednesday, all the white people were gone. they were out of here. And, you know what I mean? About 2 or 3 years later, they were gone. They were totally out of here. Even though, you know, I do remember a lot of Italian kids I grew up with.
Right.
But and what's interesting is that, as I said earlier, my family has been involved in real estate ever since we've been out here. And we always laugh when we talk about the neighborhood, because most of these people ran out of East Elmhurst and Corona because they thought black people were going to come in and cause the price of the real estate to go down and the neighborhood to go down. What's ironic is most of those white people ran to Long Island to live. The property prices in East Elmhurst are still higher today than they were where the people live.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. And we can go on and on because I know with the real estate, I mean, I can just testify for myself. My first apartment in East Elmhurst, I got from the Butts. You know, they took me around and got me in my first apartment. My wife can attest to that. So thank you so much for sharing. And I know there's so much more that you can share. but because we want to give others an opportunity, we're going to move forward. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Right. We have another resident or former resident from Corona East Elmhurst, and we're so happy to have him because he can give us a perspective from the Corona perspective, because we're, as Bud said before, we're one community. So we'd like to welcome you, and just tell us who you are and share with us however you feel that you want to share.
My name is George Caldoon, but at the time when we moved to Corona in 1952 from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my name is George Alston at the time. And when I became a teenager and joined the gangs, my name was Spain. So I have about 3 or 4 names that I go by in my growing up in Corona. Growing up in Corona, as I mentioned earlier, we grew up on 102nd Street between Northern and 34th Avenue, and there are a lot of families there. We had the Flemings on the corner, we had the Wootens, the Gene Wooten and his whole crew across the street from them. And so in the mornings, it was very interesting. During the summer, we would get up. First thing we would do is play punch ball. Then we would play punch ball, and then we play stick ball. And then around 12 o'clock, we would walk up to PS 92 because they had free lunch. So we would go up to PS 92 and have free lunch, you know, and after that we would go to the schoolyard and play. We would play strike box at PS 92, and after strike box, there was always a fight, right? So we would gather around and somebody would watch who's going to fight and all this, and who's going to be the toughest guy on the block. And then after that, we would say, well, let's go get some fruit. And we would all say, okay, where are we going to go? Let's go to East Elmhurst. Because they had the fruit trees down here. The apple trees, the pear trees, the cherry trees, you know. And so we were really good because we knew how to jump over fences and climb people's trees and pick the fruit, and then they would chase us out, and then we would run back to Corona. And so that was a great experience. So then we'd do that just about every day. What are we going to do today? What block are we going to hit? Arrington Street, or we go to 24th Avenue? Oh, there's a pear tree on 97th Street. Let's hit that one. So it was it was always into something. And as we got older, I guess it was around 1963, 1964. When I was a teenager. I was walking up Northern Boulevard one day, and I ran into a friend of mine who we called him Cody at the time. Cody was a member of the chaplains. He was the big people. I was a member of the chaplains, but I was of the little people. But anyway, Cody's the toughest guy, and he just came home from jail. And so Cody had this bow tie on. He said, look, man, let's go down to East Elmhurst, because to the Elmhurst Club, there was a club down there on Ditmars Boulevard, run by some black men and women who started this club. As Brother Butt said, brothers from East Elmhurst came together and put together something. So we went down to the club. You had to go there and you had to go down the stairs, and so we were at the club, and then this tall, lanky black man came in with glasses, and I'm sitting there, and I said, who's this guy? Somebody said, well, that's Malcolm X. And so we're sitting there, and Malcolm X started talking about the history of black people. He talked about how we didn't come here to America on the Nina, the Pinta, or the Santa Maria, but we came here in the holds of slave ships. And then he went on to talk about how we hate ourselves as being black and that we're not Negroes. And I was really impressed with that, knowing that I wasn't a Negro, but I was a black man. His thing was if a white man call himself white, why can't we call ourselves black? And so that logic really stuck with me. And so when I left the club, I came up on Ditmars Boulevard. And coming down the block was about 15 people, right? Young guys. And one of my old friends, his name was T, he said, man, I don't like the way you've been looking at me lately. And so I said, man, I don't want to fight. I mean, I just heard we black people, we should be together. You know, we shouldn't be into fighting each other. What's going on with that? Why we got to fight and kill each other? And so, so everybody thought I was copping out, right? So I had to fight one more time. This is growing up. And so, so, you know, as time went on, I started really thinking about life and what I was going to do with my life. And then one day, again, I ran into Khalid. He says, look, I want you to come down. I want you to go to the Mars in Manhattan. I said, where? So, but I want you to go to 99th Street and Astoria because I want you to go to Molet's house. They lived right down, used to live right down the block. The Molets were dedicated followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so, so I came down, and it was the first time I rode in the Cadillac. They had this big Cadillac. I said, oh, these Muslims are into something. I was really thinking about joining them. They're not playing, you know. They got this black nationalist thing, plus they got cash, you know. So he took me up. They took me uptown, 116th Street. I heard Malcolm X again, and that's when I joined the Nation. And then that summer, when I came, I got a job at the library. Miss Marshall was running the library at that time. And they had this writer's workshop that was paid for by the New York Times. And I wrote my first essay there. It's called The Prairie Fire. Prairie Fire Can Start the Revolution. I wrote this essay for the newspaper. And across the street at that time, there was a recreational center, and that's where the Black Panthers had started their activities. So there's a lot of political activities going on in the 60s. After that, I went off to college and went to graduate school. And when I came back, again, I moved down to 99th Street. I used to live right down the block. And recently we moved to Long Island. So those are just some of my experiences.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Let me ask you, you talked about coming down to East Elmhurst from Corona.
I got married. I'm sorry.
To rob the peach trees.
Yes.
Climbing people's yards.
Yes. we were
basically like, terrorize the community. Is that what you're telling me?
They weren't terrorized. Most of the people were working. Now and then somebody would scream and say, get out of my backyard, but hey, we were hungry. We wanted those peaches and cherries and cherry trees, and so it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
That's beautiful.
I got a lot of scrapes on my leg and climbing over those fences. And anyway, that's another story.
You mentioned the chaplains. Okay. What other groups, gangs up in Corona were you aware of?
Well, there was the Clovers, there was the Dutchmen, there was the Falors, you know, and your gang, the Viking Lords.
That's okay. We can edit that out. That's not a problem. Go ahead.
And the Viking Lords, you know, those are the ones that I can recall. Mm-hmm. But when we went out of town, we were considered ourselves chaplains. Everybody was chaplains from Corona. Mm-hmm. Another thing we used to do too, we used to come over here and catch the 19B to go to Astoria Pool. That was a big thing. All of us together, about maybe 15, 20 guys. We used to always go to Astoria Pool over in Astoria Park. But coming back, getting on the 19B, there was always a fight because the white boys would just want to harass us, trying to get back to the bus, coming back out here. So those are some interesting experiences.
Just one other question. Butch talked about institutions in the community to address the issues in the community. Were there any institutions that you can recall that tried to organize the gangs in Corona?
Yeah, I remember distinctly. There was a church, the church on 102nd and 34th Avenue. They had a youth center. And
was that the Corona Congregational?
Corona Congregational. Mm-hmm. And if you were 12, you can join the youth center. Right? And so I couldn't wait till I became 12 or 13 to join the youth center. So I joined the youth center, and there used to be dances there. Everybody was dancing and partying, and that's where I met Lucius. Mm-hmm. And Lucius taught me how to mumbo at that center. And that's where I learned how to mumble, how to do salsa, and as that stuck to me to this day. But it was Lucius and his crew that got me into Latin music that I'm into today, as you know.
Yes. Edit that part too. Well, thank you so much. That was fascinating and interesting, and we want to hear more, as we go forward. But this is a great start for the an inside look at Corona East. We do that, Lou, because it's well deserved. We can't really talk much about Corona without mentioning Lucius Benson, who has impacted so many people in this community. So as he gets younger, we want to hear from him. This is a great opportunity to get it firsthand from his mouth to our ears. So Lou, in your own way, tell us what some of your memories of Corona East Elmhurst. When did you first come here, by the way?
I came here from Corona Heights, moved from down south. I was a little young boy, around 9 years old. And I fell in love with Corona. I fell in love with what I saw. And I knew it was Italian, but I grew up and hang out, all the time, But I'm writing a book about all this. It's hard to put in words, but the love I have for Corona, y'all have no idea, I dedicate my whole life to this place. Okay? I stayed up all night, weekends. I sat in my car at night, making sure the guys go to sleep and get home safe. In fact, they called Corona Bill Holland in those days. Corona was just as bad as Holland in those days, But I guess God, Allah, someone asked me to do what I did, all my life, because I fell in love with this place. I just wanted to be the father of whatever I turned out to be, but I put my whole life on Corona here, man. And I love you guys,
We love you too. I just want to ask you something specific. We mentioned about Northern Boulevard, the gangs, and I know that from a youngster watching you and observing you, you were very involved in helping us get off the boulevard. Tell us about that time when you had folks like Big Lucky, Little Lucky, Torch, Count,
all the tough guys. And Jim, right?
Scratch that.
So was the guy. He's one of the smartest guys I knew, like street wise and wise, and I made sure he was in school. I told his father I had his back, and he better go to my beat his butt. And I meant that too. I would whip his butt if I had to. I love him that much, And we got four girls, great, my sister, And I just, for some reason, all I told me, hey man, this is your job, man. Corona's your job, And I dedicated my whole life to this place, And I'm still living Corona. I'm still doing what I can do with Corona,
If I may, I can tell you one thing he taught us was to box. Okay, so when we had conflicts in the neighborhood, he put boxing gloves on us. He said, you solve your problems with your boxing gloves. So if you couldn't box, you didn't have a problem. You wouldn't mess with it. But if you think you can beat somebody, Lou taught you how to box.
We call it fair one.
The fair one. Yeah. You're familiar with the fair one, right? Yeah. And if you don't mind, Lou, I just have to say this, that what impressed me about him growing up in Corona is that he had a kind of code of conduct behavior. If you left the neighborhood with somebody in the neighborhood and you ran into difficulty outside of the neighborhood, you better not leave that person in danger. You would have to come back to the neighborhood with that person. And if you left one of your friends in danger outside of Corona East Elmhurst, and Lou heard about it, you had to come back and face him, because that was the code of conduct. We looked out for each other, and he insisted on doing that. I have to say one other thing, and I don't want to take all your time, but what impressed me about Lou was that he was gentle. He could beat everybody, but he wasn't a bully. But if you mess with him, you had a problem. And I can tell you now, and I say this for the camera, how you know you mess with him? When he starts blinking. If he starts blinking, you better keep moving, because there's going to be a problem. Okay. Lou, in terms of the changes, I know you were tell me about your involvement with Elm Corps.
We started with Malcolm X first. We go to play him every Wednesday. So Malcolm's with Malcolm in Manhattan, 16th Street, every Friday to jump through. So he meets us on me and two of my boys go to play him every night almost. And he says, talk to us all the time, my brotherhood, people, this stuff, And it made so much sense to me, I was doing my Latin, I was dancing, I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff, But he taught me about, people, about, so that's why I really got involved in really, helping on that level, And as far as the gangs and all that, you better not fight each other around me, We have brother clubs and all that kind of stuff, but I know there was more to it than us killing each other, I knew there was more to it than getting high and all that kind of stuff. So what I did was just dedicate my whole life to what I'm doing right now. I'm still doing the same thing right now. I haven't stopped yet, When they bury me, then he's finished, It's Spade, and his brother, his Gloria, everybody Corona, my family, And in fact, I used to stay at my house all night in the car. I sat from Jeff Opie's house, and guy's house in the car, make sure that you were safe. There's certain bombs in the house at one time. They took gas bombs. You were just So I stayed in my car all night, many nights, just make sure everything's okay. Everybody was safe. Even the police told me something. They let me know. They knew. I have to let them be. Don't mess with them. So I got a lot of respect, a lot of stuff from a lot of people, and I'm still about 80 years old last week, y'all.
Whoa! I always knew you were younger than me, but anyway. Why did you have this kind of love for the community? Where does that come from?
Oh man, where it come from? Yeah. But I always love people. I like people. I always, I come up getting South and all that stuff. But I always love people. I always wanted to do something to help people. God blessed me with some talents. With my hands. My hands help me get some nice moves in life, my life, And I'm just still doing it. I'm still trying to help people survive, There's no magic,
I'm just going to take this time to just mention some names, and I wish you would, for the historical purposes, you could say a few words about them. Cody.
One of my sons. I have a bunch of specialists. He's one of Cody. Cody's one of us. Well, I went Cody, and I was my left, right hand. He was one of my main guys that stuck close to the north side. And Cody, Lucky, Cody. There's so many of them. Count, right? You gotta be crying, man. y'all have no idea what I've been through here in this place in Colombia, and how wonderful it has been for me to meet people like yourself, Jimmy, guys who came through all of it, and still doing it. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, you enriched my life beyond words.
Proud of you.
So the history with Lou goes all the way back to a group called the Politicians. The Counts, the Gladiators. These are street gangs that came together up in Corona for protection. We even had a group called the Syndicate, where all the groups came together, to protect our community. But Lou was and still is the leader of that group, and so. But he wasn't feeling that well, but he came out here today because he wanted to share. So let's give him a beautiful round of applause. We have a resident, current resident of Corona East Elmhurst. We're going to ask him to introduce himself and just share with us some historical facts that we might not know about his experience living in this community. So please.
My name is Gregory Campbell. Live on Ditmars Boulevard. My family's been in the neighborhood since 1949. Actually, the house was purchased in 1949, and we moved in 1950. My father purchased the house from Ella Fitzgerald, and since then we have tried to maintain the house as much as it was the original state. We've done everything that's been done in the house is just remodeling over or refurbishing. We're trying to leave it originally as we purchased it. When I grew up on Ditmars, it was 2 lanes from what I remember. It was a quiet block. Next door to me was the Genovese family, the owned Genovese drugstore. Couple houses down, there was a gentleman, a family, and W.C. Fields' wife lived on the corner of 27th Avenue on would be the south side of Ditmars. And then we also had, coming up, Willie Mays was on the block. We had numerous people on the block. We had one of the first black doctors there, Dr. McCaskey, was also on the block. We've had numerous people that lived on that block. But when I grew up there, it was just a fun block coming up and down. You could ride your bike, there was no problems. Like they said, there were several German people that were on the block at the time. And I remember an instance where my sister was playing outside, a couple houses down on the other side of the street. And when she was playing, one of the neighbors across the street came out and said, "You can't play in front of my house, nigga. You know, you cannot play." So she, like, "Yeah, I'm not no nigga." So who are you talking to? And they continued with "move away from in front of my house, nigga." So she came home and ran to my mother, told my mother. My mother went down there. My mother was a woman that was very quiet. Everybody in the neighborhood knew her, but she did not take much nonsense from anybody. So she went down there and got the white lady straight. And ever since then, she didn't have any problems with that neighbor. But they did move out 3 weeks later. Other than that, I just remember East Elmhurst as a very fun place growing up. I mean, there was never any problems. Nobody locked their doors. There was just people from everywhere that would come down to Ditmars. Everybody respected the neighborhood. There was no, I didn't see anybody not like throwing garbage or anything. Everybody looked out for their property. It's a whole different way of living here now. It has changed. When the older people were here and when we were coming up, if somebody did something bad, if a neighbor's child did something bad, they were scolded by that person. And then they came home and told your mother and you got in more trouble, you know. But now they were just running amok. So it's a whole different situation. But I just remember good times living here in East Elmhurst and growing up. And this was one of the better parts of my life. And I'm still here. I moved away. I'd gotten married and come back. And I'm back in the house. And like I said, I don't plan on leaving that house. So the house has been, like I said, in the family for over 60-something years. You know, and we have, when Ella Fitzgerald made, there was a song that she had famous called Tisket or Tasket. And the basement of our house, the floor is designed to that song, like a Sister Tasket, and certain parts of the song are in the basement floor. Then also, we have, like I said, we purchased, like I said, we have here where my father purchased a stove, a refrigerator, a wicker set of, which is a couch and love seats, and we still have that today. We still have that wicker set, and that's how well it was made. And that is in our solarium, in our porch. And so, like I said, I just have good memories of East Elmhurst and living in this community. And I love being here. I don't plan on leaving, going anyplace else. I don't know any other place that I would want to live.
Reggie, that was really rich, and thank you so much. Okay, let's give him a nice round of applause. Now we have brothers from the neighborhood who are going to share. One is going to not be on camera, but the other one will be on camera, so you'll hear his voice. And so we look forward to them introducing themselves and sharing with us whatever memories they have about our beloved community. Start with you, Doug.
Well, I'm James Bryant, and I think I'm the 9th child of 13 children. And this is my brother Roger, which should be
I'm the 11th.
11 children. And we grew up in East Elmhurst. We moved here in 1952. We moved to Humphrey Street, where we live, where my brother still lives. Here, how can I put it? We lived in a very nice neighborhood. We really enjoyed it because we coming from Harlem. We grew up in Harlem, and then we moved here. My father was a longshoreman, and he was into real estate also. My mother was a housewife. Never worked a day in her life. We'll leave to my brother.
I just want to kind of add to that a little bit. When we came to Humphrey Street, it was only 3 black guys on the block. That was my age. What I liked about coming to East Elmhurst was that it was a perfect community. I don't think I've ever seen any real racism. And yet, when we came, there were still white people on the block, but there was black people in the community. There was black people all around us, maybe more concentrated in Corona, but in East Elmhurst there was plenty of white people. So I grew up with a lot of white friends. The thing is, there was no racism here. You felt free, and I think it just was a community that allowed you to grow. Most of everything in East Elmhurst when I came was black owned. Just about all my friends had a father or mostly a father that had a business right here in East Elmhurst, whether it was a store, Nobody seems to remember the Cracker Bowl. You don't remember the Cracker Bowl down there like 85th Street? The Cracker Bowl supermarket?
Yes, Cracker Bowl supermarket.
We went to the A&P, which was up here.
Yes.
But they went to the Cracker Bowl, which was down on 85th Street on Astoria Boulevard. It was a supermarket called the Cracker Bowl. But the main thing for me is that it was a good community. We had people, I'm talking about African Americans now. African Americans in this community, we all worked together. I don't think any time I grew up that I didn't even know my friends was West Indian or African or Southerners or whatever. Everybody was black together. That's really what stood out for me. That there was no racism between us and white people. There was no disagreement amongst us because of where we came from. I didn't know a lot of my friends. I didn't know where they came from. We was just friends. Now, I understand that some of my friends called my father Mumbles, I guess because of his West Indian accent, but I never recognized it, and I didn't find that until lately, that they did call him Mumbles. I never knew that. but it was a place that, you know, when I was little, okay, most of the places that you see recent houses on the block were empty lots. We played in empty lots. Me, Kermit, Johnny, Frankie, Italian, Joey, Italian, you know. My only problem was Italian was getting to that train station. That was the only problem I had with Italians was getting to that train station. And a lot of my friends...
Which station is that?
103rd. 103rd. Now most of my friends from Corona used to let me know that that's going to be a task, and I had guys that would walk me over. You know, I don't think I ever walked over alone at that time, but some of my friends went to, I guess, 92 and 16. They know how to deal with them. You know, actually, I was riding my bicycle over the bridge. My nephews came over the bridge by bicycle one time. My father, which is their grandfather, gave them hell. But from that day, I used to ride to Manhattan on my bicycle. Maybe I was only 12 years old. I would ride down Astoria Boulevard across the bridge, because we also came from Harlem. You know, I think a lot of people in East Elmhurst came from Harlem after they built that bridge. You know, just like all of Jews went from Delancey Street to Williamsburg, you could just look at any community. If transportation took you there, when you moved to the next level, suburbia, you want to cross that bridge. You know, you could just look at it around the city. That transportation is everything. You know, if the transportation take you there and you take you to a neighborhood where you could develop and grow, everybody follow. You know, and I think maybe the early people in Corona, that might not have been true for. But the people that came, I think, after the 50s or in the 40s, I think came across that bridge from Harlem. This was the first place that developed with black people from they built that Triborough Bridge. Jamaica was further. And East Elmhurst is a gold mine. I would never leave. You know, I have lived out of this community, but I've never had an address outside this community. I had apartments in Manhattan, but I always lived here. You know, I think because of the proximity of East Elmhurst to the airport, it was just a gold mine. I don't know how it ever got away from us. I think the new generation that went away to school, got that education, didn't come back. Or for whatever reason, started to settle in other areas.
He looked at me. Did y'all notice that? It's on camera. It's on camera. He looked at me when he said that.
You know, but some of us that wasn't school, you know, some of us that wasn't school, I think we just end up staying. But the neighborhood, because, you know, East Elmhurst had everything. Some of us did well, and some of us didn't do so well. But we all were friends. I mean, I seem to have gotten along with everybody. Now, mind you, when I was young, I was very bashful, very quiet. I could never, I kept ties in Manhattan because in the beginning, it was hard to make a friend over here.
I'm going to have to stop you there because of time.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I know you got a wealth of information.
Thank you.
Okay. But there's one thing you did say that I just want to emphasize about the black businesses. Because my experience up Northern Boulevard, all of the black businesses that I went into were basically, you know, people who lived in East Elmhurst.
That's right.
Lane's Cleaners, Mr. Moody, you know, the Armwood Funeral Home, you know, places like that. And I can see now more clearly why they call this community Little Harlem. Everybody seemed like they came from home. Okay. So we want to thank you so much, both of you, for sharing this. Okay, we have a current resident? We have another current resident of the community of East Elmhurst?
East Elmhurst.
Okay, and we're going to ask her to identify herself and in her own way share with us.
My name is Yukela Brewster. I've been here just about all my life. I live on 99th Street near Northern Boulevard. And I'm a very quiet, shy person. And a lot of things I've seen, you know, go on and whatnot, but I always kept to myself. There was never no problems. I used to play ball for a league. Yes, Rocky Starlets used to be the man on the ball on 96th Street in Astoria. We used to play, it was called Rocky Starlets. And I went to 127, I went to 92. And as I say, I'm very shy. And I love East Elmhurst, and I've been here just about all my life. Right up on 99th Street. Now I live on Erickson Street. And I've been there about 20-some years. But actually, I'm really just from East Elmhurst. Okay, and as I say, I love East Elmhurst. I don't have much to say, and I am a quiet person and a shy person. But anyway, I love East Elmhurst. And I might know you when I was younger, but I can't remember.
Oh, okay. She said she might know me when I was younger.
When we were younger.
We were younger. I went to 92 also. Sure.
I'm curious about the lady, what softball league, or what league was it?
What was called Rocky Starlets.
Okay.
Yeah, Winston LeLand used to own the bar right on 96th Street and Astoria Boulevard. And we played different in Brooklyn and Manhattan, different, and our home was 127.
Okay, and when you played in the neighborhood, where did you play?
127. In that, yeah, 127.
We're not supposed to have any questions from the audience, but anyway, I got to eat tonight. Thank you so much. Listen, I want to thank you so much. Shy, did she do good? Okay, we have a resident of East Elmhurst, another resident, and we're going to ask him to identify himself and just tell us in his own words what he'd like us to know.
My name is Stephen Foster. I live at 106-33 Ditmars Boulevard. I've been there just about all my life. I left the neighborhood different times for short terms. I always came back. My father bought the house in 1952. We used to live in Jamaica, Queens. He is originally from Harlem. His mother's from Barbados. My mother is a Southerner. She's from South Carolina. My father was very keen on business. He was a numbers man in Harlem, a successful numbers man. He took that money, parlayed it into businesses. He owned a hotel called Roy's Plaza on 5th Avenue, 130th Street, around the corner, across the street from St. Ambrose Church. He owned that hotel, and that's what really got him started in the business. He took that and bought the liquor store on 94th Street, 9409 Astoria Boulevard, East Elmhurst. That's the place I grew up in. My father was very strict. He didn't believe me hanging out in the streets. I didn't have much of a social network. My social network was in the liquor store. He made me be in there, work behind the counter, take deliveries on the bicycle, liquor. On the bike, I carry a bottle in my hand, deliver it to different places. Actually, I still remember the people I delivered liquor to. I remember all the brands. I remember all the brands of liquor too. I grew up in the liquor store. My mother and I. My mother was in there, and I was in there. And the only time I could hang out was at 12 o'clock at midnight when we closed the store. He allowed me to go out. No, I didn't have to come home at a certain time. But as far as streets, gangs, I knew about them. I knew everybody in the street from the liquor store mostly. He did not allow me to hang out in the streets. Very strict on that. And because he came from the streets. He came from 116th Street. And he knew what it was all about. He didn't want me to get into that. I went to private school. I didn't go to public school. He allowed me to go to public schools. I used to hate it. Anyway, then he bought the hotel. Remember the old LaGuardia Hotel on Ditmars Boulevard? He bought that. It was a very popular place, the Cloud Room. It was a place where people could hang out. Had a motel on one side and a bar on the other side. So you just cross on over if you wanted to. It was a very popular place. Basically, he was very much into business, my father. My mother stayed home mostly. She was a housekeeper, homemaker. She raised us. And basically, that's it. I've been in the neighborhood a very long time, and I'm very conscious of the neighborhood. I belong to the Ditmars Boulevard Association, and I'm retired, and I'm more civic-minded now. I wasn't so civic-minded when I was younger. I knew about Elm Corps, and I knew about different groups, but I was more into that liquor store. That's all I do, and going to school. So, but now I'm become civic-minded. I'm concerned about Ditmars Boulevard. I want to keep it clean. I want to keep it nice. I'm concerned about people taking care of the front of the houses and make it nice and just maintain the way it was and just try to keep it nice. And not only Ditmars, the whole East Elmhurst, but I can only control a certain area. I'm not controlled, but I only can really look at a certain area, and that's where I live on Ditmars, and I'm concerned about it. And do you have any questions? No. I mean, if you have any questions, please feel. And also, my father was good friends with Gregory's father. Gregory's father is the one who's persuaded my father to buy the place, my house on Ditmars. They were very good friends. My father was very good friends with Freddie. Freddie used to work for Pan Am. And my father had business in Barbados, West Indies. That was where his mother was from. Fantastic. And Freddie would help my father out with transportation of products and heavy-duty stuff on the planes and stuff to bring the furniture and stuff to Barbados from here. He would purchase the stuff here and ship it to Barbados. Beautiful. And that's about it. Okay, Cheryl, I remember Cheryl from a long time ago. And Butts, Edward Butts Senior was a very good friend of my father. And they were partners in a lot of, they exchanged ideas and everything back and forth. He was right across the street from the liquor store. That's realty.
Again, this is great information. I have no questions. I'm just glad you didn't look at me when you were talking about the liquor store.
That's all I know. Actually, I know the telephone numbers. I know the brands.
Well, it's okay.
It's amazing how it's extra.
We have to get him off camera right now. Thank you so much. This is really nice. Welcome back. We have another resident of Corona, East Elmhurst, with us today, and who's going to give us reflections of his experience living in this community. And we're going to ask him to introduce himself.
My name is Mike Solarczyk. I lived on 34th Avenue and 112 at the Dory Miller Co-ops. I was there for about approximately 13 years of my life.
Well, let me ask you this. At Dory Miller, who were some of the families that you became close to in that area?
Okay. Well, in my building, you had the Kellers, who were they were a Jewish family, as it turned out. We had a gentleman by the name of Johnny Richardson. Johnny Richardson was a folk singer who recorded albums for children. He was one of the first guys I met who devoted his career to kids. And I was starting to really get into folk music because I really loved this guy. He'd bring me down recordings of Pete Seeger and the Weavers. And hey, this is my kind of music. Or Hoot Nanny. Amongst a number of other people that I became very friendly with was the Adderley family, Cannonball Adderley, who was a great jazz musician, and his brother, Nat Adderley. These were two gentlemen that were coming up in, the world of music. And they never they were African American, but we got along like brothers. I was a 13-year-old, 14-year-old kid by that time, and I got to digress with them. I got to talk to them. It was just like going to anybody else's house. Along the way, I met a radio DJ who was working for WWRL in the day by the name of Hal Jackson. And living in Dory Miller was Miss Gladys Harrington, who at the time was the Harlem chapter chairwoman of CORE. So again, there was a lot of stuff that I learned. I attended sit-ins at different restaurants when we were forcing integration.
Here in the city?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Do you recall any of those restaurants' names?
I don't remember the restaurants anymore. Once or twice I got to go in and sit down. Other times they say, Mike's a little too dangerous, you're a kid, so stay in the car. We don't want you hurt. I'm trying to think. There were other notables who I didn't know personally. I mean, next building for me was Clark Terry. And I always wanted to meet him, but it somehow never did take place. What's very interesting about Dory Miller is that we were all very close friends. Carol Drew, Eric Kaiser. Again, Eric Kaiser's father was Ernest Kaiser, who became the head librarian for the Schomburg collection in New York City. So I met people that just weren't everyday. They were everyday people, but they were intellectual. They were fabulous thinking people. Another person who I became friendly with in my building was a gentleman by the name of Smiles Thompson, who was a nightclub entertainer. So again, I met Dory Miller, people gravitated to Dory Miller for the diversity. Yeah, it wasn't unusual.
Did you guys visit each other's homes? Did you eat at each other's houses? And
yes.
You had a very close social relationship with these people?
Cannibal Adderley, I definitely ate in his home. Gladys Harrington, she had a son, a little younger than myself, Lonnie, yes. And Hal Jackson was truly a friendly, overwhelming guy. But I must say, one of the true highlights of my life, when my family was invited to a charity event that Cannonball Adderley and his band were playing. It was my first introduction to the Apollo. And walking into this theater was like nothing I had ever seen before in my life. It was fabulous. It was unbelievable. But on this particular playlist, I had the privilege of seeing not only Cannonball Adderley, I saw Mr. Ray Charles and the Raylettes. As a kid, I'm seeing Ray Charles. And to top it off, there was Red Fox. I mean, I wish they were all here today. I wish I could go somewhere and see them.
I want to say that your testimony is really wonderful because it really speaks to people knowing people beyond the racial divide. And so you're the first one that we've interviewed from the community who's not African American. So your perspective is extremely important. So I think that we're going to wrap it up at this particular point. Let me just say that we really appreciate everybody who shared a story, because those stories are our history, and we really appreciate it. Every one of us have a book. We just have to write it. My wife wrote this book about my life in Corona, East Elmhurst. I'm sure there's a lot of things about that we didn't talk about. For example, how many of you remember the Ice House? All right, I got one for you. How many of you remember leftovers? Leftovers is when you went down to the airport and got the leftover cakes. You don't remember that, huh?
Now you show me.
Yeah, it was a highly kept secret, you know. But there were so many memories that we can record ourselves, because when you put it in print, it stays there. What we're going to do, the next phase of this program, is that we're going to show this film before we release it publicly, so that you can get a chance to see it and talk about it. If you want something for us to do to edit, we will do that. But we want you to see it first, and we want you to also bring your neighbors and friends and children to see this film, because there's information in here that's so vital for their growth and for their development and for their advancement. So we're going to be making an announcement as soon as we're able to do that, and we look forward to you coming. All right, Andy, that's your hand up?
When is the next filming going to be?
We don't know yet. We have to kind of like, we will let everyone know. We got everybody's name, we got their phone numbers, etc. So we will be able to contact you and let you know. And I want to thank the Elmhurst Senior Citizen Center for allowing us to use this space. So let's give them a nice hand. And I want to thank Lil, who has just been terrific in helping us. Let's give her a nice round. So, and Robert. Oh, absolutely. You know, Robert is so much, look, Ron, Robert is so much a part of us. I just like, So yes, Robert Butts, please give him a nice. And Pat, yes. So we're going to end on that note. We will be continuing this project. As I said before, it's a long-term project. We hope to have the funds at some point to have a professional person to do the documentary, who can write it, organize it, and present it, so we can have it always available to people who want to know firsthand what Corona East Elmhurst is about. Not somebody coming outside of the community talking about the community or interpreting what took place in the community. This is rich history right here, and we want to get it, filmed, documented, and presented in a way that truly reflects the glory and the greatness of this community. How many people live in Ella Fitzgerald's house? I mean, Dizzy Gillespie, Harry Belafonte, Eric Holder. We can go on and on with the people who have enriched this community. So we want to get all of that so that people can know. Again, on the 21st of October is a walking tour. I have to thank my wife, Dr. Bessie Blake. Please give her a nice round of applause for documenting this history right here. And my wonderful aunt, who is shy, as Mike told, but knows a lot about Corona, lived on the same block I did with Louis Armstrong on 107th Street, and I thank her for coming. She might be the oldest member in this room, so let's give her a nice round of applause. She's not going to speak to me now because I thought she was the oldest. Thank you so much.